And we return for the second semifinal of the FIDE Online Olympiad. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess. Alongside me today, Women's Grandmaster Jennifer Shahade. Jennifer, it's great to be joined by you. You have covered so many of the earlier rounds. No surprise that we have India and USA in the semifinal, right?
No, I mean, these are two fantastic teams, but really it's been a pleasure to call the different stages of this Olympiad. I think it's amazing that even though it's online, they've really captured that spirit of all of the countries in the world fighting for this prestigious honor. And now we're down to 3 teams.
We are down to just 3 because Russia defeated China earlier today to make their way to the final. And let's remind everybody of the format. If anyone here is new or unfamiliar or just forgot, it is a matchup. 6 boards will face off in the time control of 15 minutes plus a 5-second increment. So it's rapid chess. The action heats up very quickly, but if you get very low on time, you can build back that clock up. And as Jennifer stated, we are down to 3 teams because China and Russia took place earlier today. You're about to see India versus Team USA. And Jennifer, we were talking before the show, there's no team that takes this more seriously than Team India.
Yeah, I mean, this is really important to them. You can see by the players that they're fielding. We will see these lineups in just a second. But yeah, they are the favorites in this match. They outrate the United States, but the United States on a huge boon from their performance yesterday, which you got a chance to call with Danya. So we'll recap that a little bit later as well.
That's true. There is something, you get that adrenaline out. You feel like you can do it when you win a tiebreak match of that sort. But Team India is the favorite on every single board by rating. And the action is going to take place very shortly. But before we get to the games, we would like to thank the sponsor
Research University with unique strength.
In particular, we would like to thank the Shenzhen Longyang District Culture, Radio, Television, Tourism, and Sports Bureau, the Shenzhen MSU BIT University, Shenzhen Chess Academy and Pengcheng Chess Club, the Shenzhen Longyang District People's Government, the Shenzhen Municipal Bureau of Culture, Radio, Television, Tourism, and Sports, and the e-commerce platform Simuland from Russia. Thank you so much to our sponsors to make this possible. But Jennifer, the games have begun. I have the matchup between Vishwanathan Anand, the former world champion, and Jeffrey Zhang. I guess he's no longer a teenager. I'm still used to calling him a teenage sensation, but Jeffrey with the black pieces, and they're moving so quickly.
Yeah, let's take a look at and see this opening. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic game, Robert, though. I mean, this is not the Berlin, I can tell you that.
It certainly is not. And they're making the move, so we don't even have to teach anybody the theory, because this is the theory where if you look at the current state of the board, White has grabbed a rook here in the corner. That knight is going to be won eventually, but Black stole the B2 pawn. A2 is under attack. C2 is under attack by multiple pieces. Jennifer, at first glance, because I'm not super familiar with the ins and outs here, would you take White or Black?
White.
You like the extra material?
Oh, no, it's just that king on D7, right? I mean, the king on D7, still, I mean, I know it's a very close position, but yeah, like I'm a little concerned about that guy where the king on G1 is just perfectly safe at the moment.
That's very true. I think I have a slight bias towards the pawns that are going to be grabbed because I know the knight is going to be tracked, or at least to my eyes it should, and I have a difficult time seeing how White defends everything, whereas Black already lost the material that was threatened, so the worst is kind of behind you. At least that's how I'm optimistically looking at it from Black's point of view.
Yeah, totally. I get that. And I know that players who play this opening, which by the way, I assume was a French, usually love closed positions. So if you're like me and you don't really like closed positions as much, this type of opening is certainly not one that you would choose. Here we see Jeffrey Zhang on the screen. And by the way, I think his birthday is in October. So yeah, I think you're right. I think he's like turning 21. Is that maybe right?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess I'll have to buy him a drink if that's
yeah, if he wins this. But well, I'll check that. That actually was from memory, not from Google. So let's see how I did. I'm sure the chat will tell me.
Jeffrey has had a rough online Olympiad. He did strike back yesterday in game 2 with a nice victory, and then again in the Blitz tiebreak. So he's probably feeling better about his event and his chances against the former world champion. And Vichy is the first in the think tank. I guess, at first I thought it was a French as well, but it is a Caro-Kann because it's the bishop on f5. So it's a glorified French where the bishop isn't trapped behind the pawns, Jennifer. But I mean, just if we go through the stages here, this is all theoretical, this advanced pawn push, and then the c5 break and the queen b6. So again, I don't know the ins and outs. I trust Jeffrey to teach us something here as well as Vichy, but Vichy took the material and now is the one. Oh, he played the move c3. Wow, what a move, Jen. We're giving up the rook on b1 for the bishop because the pawns are very important there on the queen side.
Oh, very interesting move indeed. Okay, so c3. Now, after bishop takes b1, queen takes b1, that means we also get to protect the pawn on a2, which is really cool. But what else is going on with this move? Again, I'm trying to figure out how to open the position. So I'm looking at the move bishop d1 and a4.
That's actually an exciting idea.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing because I played, I gave up my rook on b1, I opened up that square for the bishop, and I protected my a pawn at the same time. And again, this opening of the position is so much about the fact that I see your king on d7. And also, if I were able to open the position, maybe it wouldn't be as easy for you to win that knight on a8.
Well, Jennifer, you're definitely going to like Jeffrey's last moves then, because I see some moves haven't played. And after c3, did not capture the rook, but played the move bishop a3, saying you want to open the position against my king. Not so fast. I don't care about your rook on b1. You can slide that elsewhere. I don't want it. I want to trap that knight, get my king safe. And if and when black wins this knight on a8, it's going to be a knight and a pawn for the rook. And with those pawns rolling down the queen side, we can see where black's compensation is coming from.
Yeah, I like that move, bishop a3. It makes it harder to understand what white does here. Of course, it's the legendary Anon playing for the white pieces. So I know he probably knows what to do. But from my perspective, as somebody who likes open positions, it's like, if you take my rook on b1 and I take back my queen, suddenly I have a plan,
Right.
Whereas it's a little bit trickier to figure out, okay, what is white doing here? What do you think white should do in this position?
The bishop d1 idea doesn't look so good anymore because the queen can just back up and there's no a4, and then the rook on b1 really is under attack. So queen d1 is possible, but as you can probably tell, I don't believe in the queen trade here. Knight g5 at some point, but then this knight comes to h6 just to defend this pawn. So I'm not really seeing how white should play. I said it earlier, Jen, I'll say it again. I prefer this from the black side, especially considering how quickly Jeffrey's playing.
Yeah. And I noticed, by the way, like a move like, trying to play bishop c1 to get rid of your bishop on a3. Now the rook on b1 is hanging for nothing, right?
That's right. Wow. I'm sort of shocked because I'm not used to seeing Vichy out prepared, but it seems like that's the case in this game. So why don't we hop on to some of the other boards to see how his teammates are doing, because he may need them to score in order to give himself a little bit of breathing room in this game.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the other games. Although, and he played bishop c1. I was just going to say that after bishop c1, bishop takes b1, bishop takes a3. The story is not over because we do get a chance to win that bishop back. But and it's kind of similar to before, where we are now. Well, what is the material count? I mean, we're currently up a piece, but the knight on a8 is 100% trapped. I mean, the funny thing is, even if you played a6 here to defend your pawn, after knight b6 check, king c7, the knight is still trapped, right? I'm not saying those were the best moves. I'm just saying it's very difficult to get that knight out.
Yeah, and I think actually black should just go ahead and win the knight directly. Queen takes b5 is white's main idea, but after rook not taking on a8, this is an idea that I love in chess, is when a piece stops one square short of the capture, rook b8 says, where's your queen going? Your queen has only one safe square, that's c5, and don't mind trading queens, because at the end of this, your knight is lost here. e5 is weak, c5 is weak. This endgame is terrible for white, whose bishop isn't doing anything. So this could be a forcing sequence, and if that happens, then Jeffrey is in the driver's seat.
That's a cool type of move. Do you know if it has a name?
No, but if you name it after me, I won't be unhappy about it.
I mean, I know the move collinear is like a move where you make a move in an open file, but you don't bring it to the end or make the trade. But I think this is a little different. Well, somebody has a name for it in the chat. Let us know. I feel like feel like anything that doesn't have a name that happens a lot is, it would be useful to even have your own private name for it, because then you're going to see the tactic more easily.
That's true. So we'll have to come up with one if one does not already exist, or even if one already exists, we'll give it a new name. But it looks like
better one. Yeah.
Jeffrey retreated his bishop instead of taking on c1, and then Vishy quickly went rook to b2 to protect the a2 pawn. Your bishop d1 idea is alive and well. So we'll see how this one continues. But let us jump over some other boards. I see the game between Nihal Sarin and Wonder Liang. Not many pieces are on this board here. Many trades have happened, and at first glance, it looks like white should be slightly better thanks to the positioning of the rook on d1 and the queen on e4. But I looked to the side to the eval bar, and it says, hey, black's position is fine, probably because the bishop on d6 is pinned to the rook on d1.
Yeah. This one looks like the opposite of the game we just looked at, which was so fiery. But, games can kind of explode at strange moments. By the way, we did have some comments in the chat. Some people said like intermezzo and intuitions, but it's a little more subtle than that. But I did like one suggestion. Delayed gratification.
Oh, that's a clever one. And I also see hesitate is good. So
that's really good. Yeah, that's great. I didn't see that one. Yeah, that's from Big Fish 00. Okay.
I'll take that one. That one sounds great. The hesitation play. We can use a play on my name there. But this game, Jen, it looks like white. I still would take white in this position just because of how harmonious white's pieces are, where this queen on f3 still staring at this rook in the corner. There's a rook on the open file for white. It's hard to attack anything specific, but it just feels like white should be ever so slightly better here.
Right. But it's more of like you're mentioning little tactical things in terms of like the structure. Black has no clear weaknesses. So as long as they don't blunder anything, I think they should be totally fine.
I agree completely. So we'll see if a wonder is up to the task against such a strong player in Nihal Sarin. And let's go to the game between Irina Krush and Humpy Koneru, because that one looks very closed. We see some closed positions, some open positions, and Irina has the black pieces and a 4+ minute lead on the clock. But Jennifer, the last move was knight f3 to d2. I think it's clear that Humpy wants to trade bishops and then try to jump this knight maybe into the c4 square.
Yeah, and my very first impression is that I do like white's position because she has this clear plan of trying to play for e4 at some moment, and the knight on c6 doesn't look like it's necessarily that well placed. But then on the other hand, if Irina can get in a break like e5, maybe it's totally fine for her.
Yeah, this is the type of game where every single move is a tough decision. Like right now, does black take on e2 or retreat bishop g6? I am not sure what the better move is. My instinct tells me to retreat because, I don't know, for some reason covering the e4 square feels very important, but then I don't want to allow this bishop to f3 after that. So I'm just going back and forth in this moment here, Jen. And which would you do? Would you take on e2 or retreat the bishop?
My instinct was to take on e2 because I thought that after bishop g6, I mean, you're not really fully covering the e4 square. And then I worried that maybe at some point bishop g6 could become a target. But yeah, I think that bishop g6 is a very classy move to look at because most players have this inclination to trade pieces off, especially when they're playing against a higher rated player. So just like making sure that you're always looking at the other option is so important.
Yeah, and as I put the position on the board, I get the sense that now white's rooks are connected. So even though black bishop on g6 does not stop e4, as you mentioned, that this actually helps white get freer pieces in the remaining ones, the rooks in particular, to double in the c file or bring this rook to d1, and the queen on e2 is well positioned there. So that's why bishop g6 sort of came to my mind, is just a way of restricting some of white's other pieces.
True. And I think one of the things that maybe I was looking at that I shouldn't have been afraid of was like, if you do play bishop g6, it occurred to me that if you try to play e5, occasionally there could be some kind of like, trapping of your bishop, like, but there's, you have the d3 square as well. So yeah, just to put some moves on the board. I don't know what would white, you wanted to play like rook e1 maybe. Well, no.
Sure. I see what you're trying to get this f4 idea in this. I love your point though, that f4 at some point can then try to trap the bishop with f5 because this bishop has run out of squares. I heard you, and I think that is even a move to consider here at f4.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just one extra thing to worry about. But it's true also that the bishop could have some nice squares on g6 as well. So we'll see what Irina does in this situation, and it looks like she does agree with you, Robert, that it's a critical moment, because here she is thinking quite intensely about the strategic moment.
And
Very instructive.
It is, and we know, of course, that Irina is such a strong player who has won the U.S. Women's Championship so many times as a grandmaster, and it is very instructive. 8 times?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, just too many times. I lost count. But here, as you said, most people just take on E2 immediately, but strong players sense the moment, the critical moments, and here is one of them. She will take some time. Let's hop on over to another. How many times has Anna won the U.S. Women's Championship?
4.
Okay, 4. So we'll go to Anna Zatanski's game against Arika Dranavala here. And it's a 4-time U.S. Women's Champion taking on the super strong grandmaster from India. This is an Anna Zatanski position if I've ever seen one. Very solid bishop pair. King is safe. Queens are off the board. Let me outplay you in an endgame.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad she seems like she's also only down a little bit on the clock. And that's good news for her as well. But Harika is just so resourceful. So let's just see what she comes up with to get active play here. She's taken on d5 and played knight to c6. So you can see that d4 square is looking juicy to her.
That's true. Just like the d5 square here is looking juicy for white. And I would castle queenside because I'm trying to get my rooks into the game. My bishop is my strongest piece, but I don't want to take on c6, at least not yet, until the position is clarified, because when I do eventually take on c6, then the queen side is completely in white's favor if black has to take back with the pawn. The king is well positioned to climb up the board and start going after the pawns.
Interesting. Yeah, this one feels like there could be some chances that this one would end in a draw, but I see what you're saying. And so what if I were to play knight to d4 here?
I guess you have no fear about the b7 pawn because f3 pawn also is hanging.
I mean, it looks a little risky to take that pawn.
Yeah, I agree, because you're opening up the files for the black rooks, which are trying to get into the
yeah. I might just go like rook b8, and then when your bishop moves away, if you rook c8 check and rook c2, and you have bishop takes d4 here, so this would lose. Yeah, but okay. The point is, I was close to checkmating you, and
I believed you completely. It does look quite worrisome, and there are actually some drawing mechanisms as well. Like a move like knight c2 threatens a repetition of knight a3 check back to c2, and it's not abundantly clear how white is going to stop all of the threats. So I'm with you. Taking on b7, it could be a bit risky, and knight d4 has to be considered if white indeed does castle queenside. Though Anna, she's prone to using quite a lot of time and getting herself in time trouble. I think she should make a decision to either king e2 or castling queenside, and do so relatively quickly.
Yeah, this one could get very interesting later, though. And meanwhile, any action on that first board, because that was quite thrilling. And by the way, I did look up Jeffrey Zhang's birthday, and it is true that he is turning 21 next month, actually on Mischief Night, so October 30th.
Wow, and he'll be in Riga, I'm guessing, for the FIDE Chess.com Grand Swiss event. So he'll be playing chess. And sorry, I just looked at the board while we were talking. The knight on a8 is gone, but so are black's f7 and h7 pawns. So let's go back a few moves to see how we got here. It seems that we had left off rook b2, knight h6 was played, and then your bishop d1 idea, the queen drops back, and bishop c2 rather than, I liked your a4 idea, Jen. That's what I would have gone for.
Yeah, maybe he was worried that after pawn, but then pawn takes a4, I had to have rook b7 check. So I wonder what was his concern with a4. Maybe he thought b4.
Yeah, it's something that you really have to calculate deeply, and I'm just spitballing here, but yeah, b4 looks like a good response. Black has so many pieces protecting the square. So instead bishop c2, we saw bishop 8. That bishop went from f8 to a3, back to e7, back to a3, but now it's a problem for white as all these pieces are hanging. So that's why Vichy took on f5 and then use an intermezzo. He could take back on b2, but let's take on e6 with check first. And that's why black is missing all of these kingside pawns, is because Vichy stole the h7 pawn. Jeffrey stole the a2 pawn, and then the queen dropped back. So now I understand how we got here.
All right. So why did the queen drop back to c2 there? Huh? Like, just trying to understand the position. I know our bishop is hanging, but like I wasn't able to just play like bishop c1 and then try to take your pawn the next move. Huh. But anyway, yeah, I would just want, maybe it looks like the bar is, very, very upset. Maybe there's queen e2.
Oh, that's
kind of like
move.
Yeah. So we actually had to defend the light squares here.
Yeah, it's amazing how this g4 move won the h7 pawn, but then gets white's kingside in danger. So that is why the queen dropped back to c2. And then look at this move by Jeffrey, queen b3, saying, please trade me. I have this pawn, this pawn, this pawn, all ready to start marching up the board. And if you take here, I would be concerned about this pawn being lost, but knight d2, he's playing knight a5, which is such a nice move because you protect the b3 pawn. It looks easy to kick the knight away as a defender, but then in comes the knight to c4, and you're forced to trade knights here, and that spells disaster for white.
Yeah, that's like a protected pass pawn by another protected pawn. Oh, that's so beautiful. Nice little pawn chain there. But if we could go back and ask, does white even need to trade queens here? Can Anand go for like queen c1 or something like that? Or queen d2? Wait, that... Okay. Okay. So he did take on b3. Is that what happened?
And then went rook to a1, and then in comes the a pawn.
So we can look at this. And now after knight d2, a4 allows knight takes b3.
Oh, that's a big miss. I wonder if that's what Jeffrey overlooked, because he's just pushing his a pawn up the board. But in this move order, knight takes b3 exploits the fact that that rook is undefended on a8. And that's huge for Vishy because he stole the passed pawn and his knight's getting into c5.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Wait, so did Jeffrey play a4 though, or did he do something else?
He hasn't moved yet. Probably because he realizes now. Yeah, he realized, this isn't working out the way I wanted to. So queen b3 probably was an imprecise move based on an oversight here of this rook being hanging on a8.
Yeah, because there was no other way to deal with this, right? No matter what, because there was no way to cover, for instance, the a5 square so that your knight could go there to protect b3.
No, there was.
So it wasn't like he really had a lot of choice here. Like, so after rook a1, I mean, maybe he had a better move, but it's not like there's a way for him to protect b3, right? Rook a1 wins that pawn. That's kind of a funny move to win the pawn, right?
And maybe that is the move order is what Jeffrey missed, because we were just talking about the show again, knight d2, knight a5 with this wonderful knight c4 idea. But rook a1 first just says no knight a5 for you. And even though your pawn can get in touch with the b3 pawn, it doesn't work out because of the pin. So Jeffrey now goes knight g6. Vishy's going to take. He's going to have the c5 square. White is just better now.
That does seem true, because finally white's going to get their turn to advance their pawns. And I think that's going to be scary. Like, for instance, the bishop could go back to c1, and then Anand can play f4. Suddenly, like, the tables are turning and white's going after black with these beautiful pawns.
And that's why Jeffrey brings his knight to f4 first, just to cause some threats. Knight d3, knight e2 check, keeping the king stuck on g1. So I like this idea by Jeffrey, but it might be a little bit late because Vishy is up a pawn and ready to try to play for more. Though don't underestimate an outside pass pawn. We love a good outside pass pawn, and that could give black enough counterplay to hold this game.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why it's really instructive. Like, black is not playing a4 because he wants to kind of keep a little bit more tension. Maybe b4 will also become an option later.
That's right, because there's a pawn chain here. You want to get to the base of the chain to make the rest of the pawns weaker. So that's a very good point, Jen, there, that b4 may be an idea that Jeffrey is looking for. But now Vishy, he can sit and think a bit. He should be happy about how this game has gone. And let's move on to maybe the games we haven't seen. Dariush against Pantalari Krishna, Dariush Svirch, that is. And oh my gosh, this looks like a positional nightmare for black. As soon as I looked, I saw the c4 square, and there's a knight ready to hop in there in a moment's notice.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I did a quick count of the pawns, and it is an actual equal material position, but white does have a very nice game. I mean, just look at every single piece in white's position. It does look really harmonious.
And this bishop is a big pawn on d6, protecting the other pawns and blockading a passed pawn here. But that's not a good piece. It's a very passive defensive piece. maybe we're underestimating black's chances a bit because rook a8 was the last move, making it clear that bishop a6 is the intended follow-up.
Okay. So, but you mentioned that that knight c4 could be played. So, do you think that after knight c4, black will play bishop a6, just pinning the knight, so that knight takes d6 would allow bishop takes e2?
Exactly. And knight b6 is the next move for black. So you're sort of kicking the knight out of c4 instantly. And that's not what white wants. White would rather trade the light square bishops. And if we just go back to live position very quickly, with the bishops off the board, if you can just visualize these gone, then the c4 square is completely white's for the taking. And that's what Dariush should aim for.
That's interesting. So you mentioned the last move was rook a8. Was it rook c8 to a8 or something?
It was, yes.
Oh, I have to say, I kind of wish we were there for that move, because that's like a nice, sweet, subtle move. I like it. Because it's a backward move. You don't usually look at a move like that. Your rook seems developed on c8, and then you move it to a8. Nicely done.
Indeed. And knight b6 played instead of bishop a6. Similar idea. Although here the knight can take on d6. I guess Hare Krishna's claim is that in the event of a trade, this rook can come to c8, the bishop can come to a6, this a4 pawn is vulnerable as well. Black is playing this in a double-edged manner. I think that black also has chances to turn this game into his favor.
That's really interesting. And I think this is a case where white wishes potentially that the rook on f1 were on c1, because then there would be more pressure on c5. And I do think, though, that the rook on f1 could come into play if white decides to break this position and play the move f4.
That's right.
But what do you think, Robert? Because I have two bishops, and you're starting to get so much action going on the queen side. I'm like, I want to create some threats. f4 actually immediately threatens. F takes e5 and bishop takes c5.
I like it. I think that, it's still a delicate position, but f4 is the idea that white needs to aim for. And actually, as we go back to the game, knight takes b6 was played, and then queen to c2. So Dariush continues to play this positionally, not opening the board up. And you see the eval bar go slightly into black's favor, in fact. I'm not convinced that black is better, but black apparently is no worse. And b3, freeing the queen to go to b4, hitting the a4 pawn. That's a really nice idea by black.
Oh, nice little in-between move indeed. Okay, so we can't put our queen on c4 because of bishop a6. So where do we put her? Just d2?
I guess no matter where you put your queen, like I almost want to pre-move queen to b4, because you definitely, queen c3 was played, and queen b4 was pretty much pre-move, because if you take, the a pawn captures back, a4 is a weakness, and I like black here.
No, I can't take then. I might have to do something like, I don't know, rook c1.
And then I'll steal your a4 pawn, I think.
Oh, right. And if I take on c5, you have rook c8.
That's at least the idea that I'm aiming for. But let's see how the players, rook c1 was in fact played. And we'll see if Hare Krishna is a bit more patient than I am and plays rook fc8 to start with, or he just goes for the a4 pawn, saying the c5 pawn is untouchable.
Well, I guess after bishop c5, rook c8, I could play queen e3 or something, right? So it's not, I'm not losing material yet.
No, actually, that is starting to look better for white again, because you're dislodging the blockading piece. So I think it is important to take time, and that's what Hare Krishna does. He plays rook f to c8. I don't want that pawn a4 just yet. I want to make sure I have my bases covered first, and then I'll go after that pawn. And the eval bar creeping a little bit up for black, move by move.
And meanwhile, look at those clocks. So right now, I mean, two phenomenal players, they're playing great moves, but as the time ticks down, the chances for mistakes creep up. So we're going to see some real, I think, roller coaster moments in the last few minutes of this match. Everybody's playing so well so far, Robert, but it can't last as we see clocks go down to 1 minute soon.
No, it can't. So I'm going to quickly just bring us to a few other boards. We haven't looked at the board 6, the girls under 20 board, and it looks like Talia is trying to checkmate this black king, but the eval bar says completely winning for black. And part of the reason why is this last move, h6. The threat was queen g3 with a checkmate because the king has nowhere to go from here. That's why h6 was played, freeing up the h7 square, which is actually extremely safe to tuck the king away to.
Yeah, the problem in this position for white is that the knight on d2. Like we just need one more piece in the attack, and it's the knight on d2 has no attacking avenues, and in fact, probably black's going to start to attack it once they tuck their king into h7 and take on e5.
Yeah, if this knight were on e3, I was trying to highlight that. Then white has a huge initiative, hitting f5, trying to get into d5. But good eye by you. Just that one piece. If that piece could be improved, then black would not really have enough defensive resources to counter. But the knight isn't in the game yet. A knight f1, knight e3. It's a bit of a journey just to try to get that knight in the game. You lose e5.
Unfortunately, by then, I think I'm going to play like takes on e5 and queen e6 and oust your bishop and start getting my own game in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That bishop lost its outpost square there. And yeah, this is black starting to clean up. So it looks like India is striking on this board here, unless something goes wrong in time trouble. I wanted to look at the game between Anna Zatonsky and Marika Jarnavali again, because now we're really in the depths of the end game. Let me bring us to the live board, where here we are, where white has a position where the pawns are mobile on the queen side, and this d4 pawn is blockaded. So I still like white's position, but with opposite colored bishops, Jen, it's one of those situations like, is it really winning, or can black control the dark squares?
Well, also there's that 20 seconds left for Anna Zatonsky. And, that's just a very risky situation because, black could win the game, really. I mean, it sounds crazy, but with 20 seconds, anything could happen. Maybe Humpy will start playing like get a rook on h4, try to take h3, things will get wild, and white could run out of time. So I think that a draw wouldn't even be a bad result for Anna here, even if she has an advantage on the board. The clock puts her in some danger.
Yeah, I didn't even look at the clock at first. I was just noticing how it seems like white has made progress, but you're right. 22 seconds with only a 5-second increment per move. You spend too much time trying to find that breakthrough, it could backfire. But I think that white is playing a4, bringing this king up the board. So it does seem to be a position where Anna should be favored, but with only 22 seconds left, it's really difficult to try and convert a position of this nature.
Yeah, but you're probably right. She will try, because the plan is not that it's not as difficult to execute as like some middle game plans where you have like a lot of different move orders and choices. But look at this, Humpy's actually going after that exact pawn. Now I noticed that, I don't know, like this could be a little bit too much on the outskirts, because look at how quickly Anna is getting her king into the game. Maybe I was like dead wrong to suggest this, because like by the time you get that pawn, my king could be on d5.
Yeah, but the eval bar says it was a good idea. So props to you. Although this bishop can come to d7, which is probably in part what's stopping Harika from playing rook h4. But she plays bishop c7, preemptive move, stopping a5 before it can get there. And I wonder if black can just put the bishop on a5, because white's next move is king b4 to push that pawn up the board. So bishop a5, it was played. No king b4 for you, but king c. I mean, honestly, this endgame is looking great from both sides. I still like white's chances despite the clock.
Well, can you consider sacrificing an exchange at some point, like rook c3? I mean, I guess it didn't really work there, but it's in the air. Rook c3, pawn c3, king c3, and then just try to queen my b pawn. Mm-hmm. But for now, Anna is playing much more subdued, which is exactly what she should do. I mean, don't be looking at like some crazy exchange stack when you have 20 seconds left. Play some normal moves. I like it.
Yeah, and here comes the king was trying to come up to c6 and b7. That's why rook f6 was played, making sure that king couldn't make any more progress. But it's still a huge fight and an immense time trouble. And she's used to that. She's done that many, many times, no matter the time control. But it is scary for Team USA to see that. Jennifer, I'm just looking all across here, and this other game between Dariush and Pantala. Look at this. There's a pawn on a3 for black, but white has these pawns in the center. I would not know how to evaluate this position if I were playing it live.
Well, if you had 1 minute on the clock and you had to pick a side, who would you take?
I guess white, because black's king could fall in some trouble. Like after like e6, I could see that king side being blasted open, and the bishop on c3 is doing a great job of defending the pawn here. Although very quickly, a takes b2 and c3 to follow. I'm changing my mind. I like black just because of that very direct plan.
Yeah, that's funny how you start talking and you're like, wait a second. that is key here. And I think that white just played b takes a3, okay? So they played b takes a3, and now what do you expect for black? Just bishop takes a3 or something else?
Bishop takes a3 looks reasonable, but then I start worrying about pressure down the f file. So maybe it does take on c3. I was about to suggest that maybe move like queen a5 played, because you're just removing the blockade. How many pawns is white up here? White has 6 pawns, black has 5, so it's 1 extra pawn for white. But it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. And look at these passed pawns, very far advanced.
And now what if I just play queen f3 here? How do you defend against my pesky threat? Are you just planning to play? Well, it didn't happen. King h1 was played, and now there's a queen trade. Of course, this is going to be nicer for black, though, because now I can't attack your king, which I was hoping to do, but I don't think it was quite enough.
Oh,
and look at that.
Wow. I did not see that coming. Rook takes a3, because if white takes back b2, and your rooks cannot come back to the first rank.
That is the most amazing tactic, Robert. Like, if I was trying to teach a little kid that pawns can't capture backwards, how can I explain why this position is so good for black, right? That pawn on b2 is doing the backward fork of the rooks. And actually, that backward fork doesn't exist because pawns can't move backwards, but it is the functionality for why black is winning, right? Because the rooks can't go to c1 or a1. Really pretty.
Yeah, and just to show that one more time, rook takes a3. If you take b2, can't bring a rook back. b1, queen equals the threat. And if you go rook to b3, I take. You take back, and then unfortunately for white, there's rook c1 check at the end, and you take the bishop that blocks, and you get the queen, so that'd be completely winning for black. I honestly almost fell out of my seat after rook takes a3.
I don't think I've ever seen that exact tactic before. I've definitely seen it with like one rook, but the fact that there are 2 rooks parallel to each other like that, and it's a really pretty tactic.
Unbelievable. Now the rook infiltrates via a2. Maybe at some point we'll come to c2 to get this rook out of here, but it's very powerful on this second rank as it goes all the way across the board here. Black, as you can see by the evaluation bar, is well ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and in blitz, this is going to be even harder to defend because of those pawns just coming at you. So I think that Hari Krishna is going to get this one for Team India. So far, it looks like a very promising match for Team India, because we saw Talia was also losing on the girls under 20 board. And then this one looks like it's in India's favor as well. Anand was doing great. Oh, and she actually has one. Okay.
Yes. So Vaishali wins. I'm looking at, you can pull up Vishy's game right here. Ooh, an end game where white is up a pawn and the passed pawn for black is blockaded. So it's pretty much like a 3-on-1 on the king side of the board here. Though probably not the easiest position to win, but Vishy, he'll mop this up. That's a good move.
Yeah, and 2 minutes and 40 seconds left as well for Vishy, so he has a big time advantage. Really nice game. I like this one a lot. Very entertaining, and then just that sense of timing with rook a1. Beautiful move there.
That was, and there's an oversight by Jeffrey, but a great find by Vishy, and that means that India's going to go up 2.5 half from what we've seen thus far, and with Hari Krishna maybe 3.5 half. So this is a round that India is proud of. Let's go to the game between Nihal Sarin and Awonder Liang. Not much has changed. The dark square is a bit vulnerable, but it's all about getting this bishop around. If this bishop were on the a1 square, for example, that would be problematic for black. But for now, it seems like Awonder has everything under control.
Yeah, that seems like it's going to be hard to pull off because black has such great activity themselves. So yeah, I think that this one more likely to be a split result, but otherwise it's been a fantastic round for India.
It really has. I think the U.S.'s best chance, Irina Krush did draw against Humpy Koneru, but Anna Zatonski now against Harika Drenavali. The pawn has reached a5. The rook jumped down to c8, but she has 14 seconds, and your ideas keep coming. Now the f3 pawn, the king is coming in for black. This is a difficult task for white.
b6 just played, presumably with the idea that after pawn takes b6, she's not going to take, but play a6. And look at that pawn go.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what she's aiming for. And you see that white would have a winning advantage here. So bishop takes b6, a good find by Harika because she gives up her bishop for 2 pawns. f3 is under attack. h3 is vulnerable as well. And Jennifer, one thing I always point out is this is a light square bishop. This is a dark square corner. So the pawn that black wants to take is this f3 pawn, because then you won't be able to win there. But actually, black is doing well because of the passed pawn in the meantime.
Oh, D3, yes. So this looks like a great little improvement for Black, as 12 seconds left for Anna Zatonski, and really anything can still happen in this position. Rook check has just been played, and now Dronavali gets to take on F3.
Ooh, so our point is after D2, bishop comes to E2 with check, and then you can block this passed pawn. So that was a pretty clever way of stopping this pawn if you're Anna Zatonski, because otherwise you probably were just losing.
True, but am I gonna get the H3 pawn too? I guess after King G2 or King G3, you'll play Rook E3 check, and it is an in-between move.
But
then King F2.
Yep.
But then King F2.
Yeah, this is over.
My advice was not very good there.
I mean, she had seconds just to make moves, and
yes,
it seemed
hard.
like the only way to try to maintain winning chances, and her team is losing. So it is
difficult, Robert, though, because it's like these forcing moves are so instinctual when you're playing with very few seconds on the clock. So King G3, Rook E3 check, right? It's like instincts, and you kind of need time to kind of like overcome your first instinct.
That's right. And for Harika, she doesn't need any time to win this position. This is actually a very easily won game. The king is cut off for white, and even if it were one file over, you build a bridge in the Lucina position. Rook to D5, showing that if the king needs to march back for black, the rook can help block the checks.
And there we see the check. So you're going to see this in real time. I mean, you can always get better at building bridges, right, Robert? In life and in chats.
That is true. Infrastructure of the utmost importance, and we'll see how Harika does this, and maybe Anna will just resign, because, in fact, she has resigned, as she knows that this is an easy win, and that leaves just one game remaining, Jen. And by the way, India has won 4.5 out of the first 5 points. So this game doesn't mean anything in terms of the round or match one score, but Nihal's going to try to win. Why not? You have the slightly better end game here, and you can have some checkmate threats. There's no harm to playing this out.
Yeah, and it's fun for us.
Yeah, that's true. And I genuinely feel that it makes players improve when they force themselves to keep going. We saw Magnus Carlsen win a great end game yesterday against Alireza Firouzja in a position that when I first saw it, I was like, wait, this should just be a draw, right? But Magnus pushed and pushed and pushed, and Alireza was not able to withstand the pressure. So I like the decision by Nihal to keep playing. And it looks like white is favored, at least before that move, but both sides under 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, what you kind of noted many moves ago. Well, now the queens are off the board, so black no longer had to worry about getting checkmated on G7 or H8, but they do have to worry a little bit. But I don't think very much. I think now this is quite likely to be a draw, because you see we get our king to G5, which is awesome, but because you have a dark squared bishop, you can't really fixate on that pawn on G6.
In fact, you can't touch any of the pawns because the A6 is also on a light square, so white can attack nothing despite having the king in such a prime location.
It looks like a lot of people are subbing, so thank you, everybody. This is really appreciated, and thanks for all the chats. I'll try to catch up on a few more of them during the during the break between games.
Yes,
I don't think we got any hesitation moves today. Hesitation. No, but that was great. That was a great phrase.
20 gifted subs, very much appreciated. Seems like someone who's happy about the result of this first match here. 5-1 in Team India's favor. Now, the good thing, Jen, is that it's like tennis, where if you lose the first set 6-0, it's a bad set. But if you win the second set, that's all that matters, no matter how close the second set is. So for Team USA, before we head to break, what advice would you give the players, and like how would you approach this second leg?
Well, you need to forget fast, right? That's key. And I think that we're going to see some player substitutions. So it's going to be some new and fresh players. And otherwise, I think every game was close, but it was just when things got down to the wire, it seemed like every game turned in India's favor.
Yeah, well, they usually say forgive, but don't forget. Now you have to forget and not forgive. Team USA needs to strike back. We'll be back for more from the FIDE Online Olympiad presented by Chess.com in just a few. and welcome back to the semifinals of the FIDE online Olympiad presented by chess.com. Jen, we had a whirlwind of a first match there between India and Team USA. India on top 5-1 in that opening match, but Team USA does have chances. So we saw earlier today, Russia defeated China in both matches. Do you think that India will do the same, or can Team USA bounce back?
Well, let's dig into some of the positions, as I'm sure we're going to get some answers soon. Wait, what is we're gonna take a look at some of the highlights here. This is the position that Talia lost, right?
It is indeed. I was just looking through the game because I saw she had a rook on A8 and it looked like she was in an aggressive position. But there's a curious moment here, Jen, where after G6, kicking the knight back, rook takes C8 was played. So I was just curious because I was just looking at it for the first time. Like, what was the intention behind Talia's moves here? Because sacrificing your rook for that bishop seemed a little out of nowhere to me.
You thought it was optimistic. Well, I'm sure she was looking at the fact that after queen C8, bishop F6, pawn takes F5, the king is in a lot of danger, right? But somehow the bishop on D3 got removed as well, right? How did that happen?
That's why she went E5.
Night before, right?
And that's what happened here, was after queen B1 trade, and then this H6 move, which we tuned in for. So it makes a lot more sense now that I put the whole game together. The perspective is there. But as we go back to that moment with rook takes C8, maybe it is in fact a pretty good move here, because in this position, the king does look like it's in grave danger, but I guess she couldn't put everything together properly. And does say black's advantage is very small, which means white clearly has great compensation.
Yeah, I think also that in this position, maybe in something instead of E5 here that like prevented knight takes before taking the bishop, maybe there was something better at this exact moment.
Maybe just taking the pawn, honestly, because this frees up a new square for the queen to jump over to. And it's not like the black king is going to be out of danger.
Good point. So you're saying after knight takes b4, you could just play queen d1 because knight takes d3 fails to queen g4 mating.
Exactly. That king is not getting out of harm's way here. So this looked like a crazy game where Vaishali ended up on top just with calculation and with good defense. But now that I'm looking at it, Talia had some great ideas of her own, and it shows that this was a true fight.
Yeah. So, great. It was. That is a really critical moment. I wonder why she played E5 instead of E takes F5. Maybe she was worried about the back rank. But actually, we were talking about how the knight wasn't very effective as attacker. So it actually does a pretty good job holding down the fort, because rook E1, we can just play knight F1, right?
Exactly, right.
But I can see how in time pressure that could kind of get into your head, that maybe you're allowing some play there that you didn't want to.
100%. So I don't criticize the mistake, but I was just curious, and now I understand much more clearly what was happening here. So that was a back and forth game, a nice battle there on the junior girls board. And I thought that most of the other action that we saw made a lot of sense of it. Of course, Anna Zatonski is the player who probably is the most upset about the result, because she was in the driver's seat for a long while. And that critical moment that we tuned in for, Jen, was right here when B6 was played, which looks like a great move, but bishop takes B6, such a good understanding by Harika that she was not able to take with the pawn. She must sacrifice the piece.
Yeah, that was really, really smart. And she did that so quickly as well. And do you think that after sacrificing, was there still some winning chances for white after this, or not really?
Yeah, it seems like there should be, based on what the eval bar is saying, but because it's so low, black should be holding, and these pawns are so weak. There's no easy way to defend both of them. So I guess realistically, white should not have been winning at this point. But if we go back, it seems the move king c5 to start with was more precise, because you're hitting this rook. The rook needs to stay in line with the bishop, but it can't go back to d7 because king c6 kicks the rook out and the bishop is lost. So instead, the move bishop e7 would have to be played, and the game continues where it seems like white is ahead, but black has very good chances to hold just based on the tactics available.
Yeah, this looks great. I think that you're right. And probably what happened was b6 was just so compelling, but she was looking more at pawn takes b6 and bishop takes b6,
right?
Especially in time pressure. That is not the first move you're looking at, most certainly.
That is correct. Well, the games are actually starting. We do have new lineups for the players, just to show that very quickly. Vidit is in for Team India, as is Ray Robson for Team USA. Nazi Paikidze joins in, and Zatansky goes out, and Pragnananda replaces Nihal Sarin. So let's see the games. They have just started, early stages here. Jeffrey playing what's known as symmetrical English, and now we have Queen takes D4. So it's a situation where you look at the long diagonal back and forth, both sides competing for it, and that's both of those long diagonals, I should say.
Yeah, this looks like it's going to be a fun one as well. I mean, right now it might look like there's not that much going on, but I get the sense that especially after seeing the first very combative game that these two played, that we're going to have a very fierce battle on our hands. So queen, this little battery we have with the queen on d4 and the bishop on b2 means that the knight on g4, it's kind of like a ghost discovery, right? Because sure, you can discover and then you can discover that you're getting checkmated.
Yeah, exactly right. As you said, knight g4 is somewhere. Good luck to you. That's mate in one. So that is something to keep an eye out for. But if you just do it for the sake of doing it, the knight protects the bishop on g7. The bishop hits the queen, bishop behind it. White just retreats, and these trades help white because the bishop on g7 is protecting the king. When we have fianchettoed bishop, we often do not want to trade it. So just moving the knight for the sake of attacking the queen is not worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that bishop takes b2, queen takes b2 there would be a really nice fianchettoed queen. And I've seen that happen in these types of Englishes, and it tends to be a really promising position for white. So that's why we see closer to the best play here by black, just knight d7.
Yes, super solid. There's not a pawn that you could target just yet, but white has more space thanks to this pawn being on c4, of course, the queen being active. So white a little bit further up the board, but black has no weakness to exploit for the time being. So we'll tune back into this game for sure. Some other games are catching my eye here. And in particular, I see this position between Wonder Liang and Pragnananda. So Pragnananda subs in for Nihal Sarin, who played a pretty nice game, a solid game with the white pieces. And I see that white's king is castled here, Jen. Black's king is in the center, and this queen came to g4, freezing the bishop for the time being on f8.
What is this? Some kind of C3 Sicilian or Rossalimo?
It was a Rossalimo with e6 and rook e1. So all this playing a knight to d4. So Pragnananda jumps his knight into the center rather than playing with like a6 to challenge the bishop. He says, your bishop will stay there. I'm happy to trade. But there comes c3, putting immediate pressure on this pawn d4.
All right, yes, and now we had a couple more moves, right? A6, bishop f1, knight c6 to hold on to that pawn, and now queen g4, stopping the bishop on f8 from developing. That's why we see queen f6 to bolster the pawn on g7.
Sort of a strange opening because, Jennifer, when we teach students, we say don't move our queens out too early, focus on your development. And black has developed a knight, but the queen's out on f6, doing a very good job of defending both the g7 and the d4 pawn. So the question I have is, it feels like white should have an initiative if you play this well, but where is it coming from? Because I don't especially want to take on d4 and invite your knight or your queen to that square. So my knight can't move from b1 without doing that. So that leads me to probably by default taking on d4. An e5, wow. That looks like a covered square, but then d4 falls. What an interesting start to this game, Jen.
E5. Okay, what's going on? So let's break this down. So E5, knight takes E5. What's the plan? Just queen takes D4. And now what's going on?
I guess you can just play D6, it would appear, to defend this knight.
Yeah. Here. I was just dying to figure out a way to get my bishop to C5 in some variation, but that's not the one.
Yeah, sadly can't get out with this queen on D4, but D6 does close in that
bishop.
But I guess if you move the knight, you can trade queens and then say you have these stacked pawns here. I can play D4. It's just a better structure for white in the endgame.
Yeah, and we already saw. Yeah, this looks like a really nice endgame for white. So I think black would certainly want to avoid that. So after E5, has black taken on E5 yet, or are there really any other moves here though?
I guess you can offer a queen trade on G6.
Yeah, you could play queen G6, right? Yeah, and then after And then after queen takes g6, pawn takes g6, the idea is that your knight is protecting d4 and white's pieces are still bottled in. So it's a much better endgame than the one where we had the doubled f pawns.
That's right. And black actually likes the open h file. This rook can come up to h5 at some point and hit the e5 square.
Yeah.
So I like queen g6 a lot now that I think about it. And white probably wants to keep the queens on the board. But where would you do that? Because a move like queen f, or well, queen h4, bishop e7 would be a response. And queen f4, your bishop c5 makes a lot of sense, developing and protecting this pawn.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that. Bishop c5 looks nice. I think that you might just, so is there any other move besides queen f4? What about just swinging the queen back to e2 or something like that? That blocks our bishop on f1 though.
Yeah, maybe it's reasonable you play g3, fianchetto the long way, but black can just develop with ease because the d4 square isn't hit anymore. So bishop e7 or bishop c5 both make sense. And I think that black's so solid here, and the bishop on c8 may be stuck for now, but soon you can even play d6 and get that bishop out of there.
Yeah, actually easier to play for black because we still, as white, would need to figure out how to untangle that knight on b1 and that bishop on c1. So I feel like if this does happen, white might indeed trade queens, and well, the endgame will still be rich, but not great for white.
Well, queen g6 played, so
he did play queen g6. Okay.
We'll need to figure this out. I'm guessing he's going to spend some time here. It is a very critical decision, and because Team USA needs to win the match, he may be looking at his board as a place. I have the white pieces. I'm playing someone that I can beat, of course, probably not as an amazing player, but you want to keep your chances alive, and that's why he played queen f4. He
played queen f4. Okay. And I remember you said about this move, you weren't super crazy about it because of just bishop c5, right?
Yeah, I think that black is really solid here. So even though white's position is completely fine, I just don't see why black should be worrying as this game continues. But we'll let the players duke it out. I just want to take our attention to as many boards as possible in the early stages. I see that the game between Vaishali and Talia Cervantes, this looks really nice for white to my eyes because the dark squares are all vulnerable for black. And where's this king going? You cannot legally castle kingside, but if you castle queenside, and it is white's turn, I might add, then I'm seeing this pawn on a5 and I'm worried about the king on that side of the board as well. So it's unclear to me what black's real plan is going to be from this position.
Well, it's white to move now. So what do you think white's going to play right here?
I see my pawn on c2 is under attack if I'm thinking it from white's perspective, but how much do I care about that?
No, you don't care about that. Take it because don't forget that after rook c1, you're going to immediately have issues with knight b5 and knight d5, right? So say I just play rook e1 here and you dare to take that pawn. Oh, I did it. Hesitate.
You did it. That's right. You can just bring the rook to c1 now. The bishop is under attack, and if it moves back, as Jennifer was saying, down goes the d5 pawn because c6 is pinned. So you're absolutely correct that c2 is not actually a pawn that black wants to capture right now. And if that's the case, rook e1 looks like a useful move. Queen e3 stops black from castling queenside, and maybe the queen in touch with the bishop is also something we could think about. But rook e1 looks very logical, just to make e5 feel very safe and sound. So I like the look of white's position, but two bishops, they can thrive in the later stages of the game as the board remains open. And if black's king can find some safety, then the bishops can do their thing.
Yeah, but it's so difficult. This looks like so difficult to play for black. I am very concerned. And wait, did white make white? Oh, I thought white just made a move. No. But yeah, I like a move just like rook e1 and a6, another good move, discouraging queenside castling. Yeah, good luck with queenside castling now. It just looks like a disaster. So before queenside castling, you'd probably want to play something like b6.
Right. Although I always have this question, when do I push the pawn all the way up here? Because for now, it's a thorn in black's side. But as the game continues and, let's say the queens come off, that pawn is a potential weakness in the long run. b6 was played. So I'm never sure when exactly to push it because it's not clear if this has truly benefited white's position.
How do you feel about the tactics after e6? Would that just be happiness for black because we would get to trade queens? I was looking at queen takes g3. Okay, I get an in-between move. E takes f7 check. And then if only I had one more tempo and I could play pawn takes g3 and g4, I would be winning. But unfortunately for white, it's now black to move. And I guess What would they do here to untangle? Like just king e6, walk over to d6 maybe?
Yeah, I think you just run away in this manner.
Yeah.
This is very close. This rook we're already on e1. Black could be just lost because the king can't run away, as it's the rook on the e file would be very happily awaiting that. So that idea is not out of the question. Black can't overlook that e6 move, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like it works because, as you said, king e6 for Black at this point. The king walks over the d file and probably d7, and the bishop pair is very happy.
Yeah, and this would be a happy bishop pair. Yeah, but you're right, Robert. I think that what you make an important point when you analyze something like this in a game and you realize it doesn't work, do not feel like it's wasted. Because sometimes a very similar variation comes up later on and there's one tweak in the position and suddenly your idea is coming up roses.
I love this move, knight to e2. I really commend Shahade for playing that because it looks like maybe you can take c2 now, but that's why she threw an a6. The c6 square is very weak. So if the bishop takes c2, knight to d4 comes in. The bishop, where can it even go? If you go to e4, I may even have f3 ideas. And if you go elsewhere, I'm just going to capture you. So I love this knight e2 move. And the bishop is in some trouble for Black.
Yeah, it sure is. Sure is. Great move also with understanding that the knight on c3, which happens kind of in a lot of openings, like the knight on c3 is not the greatest square. A lot of times all the squares that it wants to go to are covered. I feel like it happens in different openings. And yeah, the rerouting of it via the e2 square is really clever.
It is. Yeah, I always say a pawn 3 squares away from a knight dominates that knight. And it's helped by the fact that there are 2 pawns here. So the e4 square you're never getting to. So knight e2 I like a lot. So we'll see how Talia responds, as she is quite behind on the clock. Her position unclear where her king is going to go. She can castle queenside. It's legal. But with that pawn on a6 and some of White's pieces jumping to the queenside, it could be troublesome. Though keeping the king in the center doesn't look much better.
Well, now that the knight is no longer on c3, of course she could try bishop takes c2, but now that she's queenside castles, it would be even more ill-advised. She did decide to castle queenside. Okay, so now we're expecting knight d4 immediately, and that will threaten like knight takes f5, potentially devastating your pawn structure. So what does Talia intend after that? Is she going to swoop her bishop all the way back to d7? And then my move e6 finally, no, it doesn't work. I thought it was going to work.
I thought the same thing. So I was about to say it, but then I realized the lesson, the e6, if you take on g3, then it works because you take here with check and intermezzo, but the queen is defended. So you can just take.
Oh, but wait, pawn takes e6, bishop f4 traps the queen, right?
Oh, that is actually, I haven't seen a queen trap like that. Maybe ever, but definitely not for a long time. So that would trap the queen. So I guess bishop takes e6.
Yeah, you got to take with the bishop.
You take with the bishop, and even this bishop f4. I guess you now have bishop d6, so it all maybe pans out barely for Black.
Yeah, I mean, considering how good White's position was before, I feel like we're not that happy about this. I'm sure we have some compensation for our pawn, but we wanted a lot more than that. So going back, but these tactical ideas are fun. It's cool to look at them.
I like that you keep the e6 idea in mind, because honestly, when I saw castle, I just like sort of let it go. But then I thought about it again with bishop went back to d7, but keeping the idea in mind because at some moment it may work. I guess queen d7 and bishop b7 both are possible here. The queen would then defend the bishop here, but this queen can also slide to c3. It looks very precarious for Black, but the eval bar suggests that it's not that bad. So Talia will fight on.
Oh, one point again, just for everybody watching, bishop d7, e6. One of the points was that if queen takes queen, which Black generally wants to do because the 2 bishops are very strong in the endgame, we have this important in-between moves, Zwischenzug, whatever you call it, an intermediate move that ends up winning a piece and the game.
Exactly. You'll take the queen next. Just because the heavy piece is under attack doesn't mean you take it right away if you get that in-between move, as Jen just said. So we'll see how Talia responds here. Let's go to Nazi Paikidzi's game against Harika Dranavali, because Nazi subbed in for Anna Zatansky. And I love White's position here. This is a London type of position gone completely right for White. Look at this bishop aiming at the king side. You have your pawns on f4 and d4, your knight on e5. Jen, I love White's position here.
It is very compelling. I mean, the problem is, even if we can just start playing knight f3, bishop b1, queen d3, and like you know, it's immediately going to be very, very serious attacking ideas, right? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how Black can defend against this. I guess they're going to try to get B4 and like invade really quickly, but is it fast enough? I doubt it. I doubt it.
Yeah, that's the essential question. That's why Nazi's last move was A5 here, trying to get B4. And this knight actually can also jump into C5. That's another thing. This pawn on D4 is so important to this position. And that's a light square bishop that's staring into its own pieces. This is a light square bishop that's staring in both directions, but actually being an aggressive piece. So that's the problem with Black's position, is really this bishop on D7, so much worse than its counterpart on D3, and this knight on E5 very active. You almost never want to take it, because then White gets another pawn advance, creating threats. This is so good for White.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder how this happened. Do you think it was it a London, in fact?
No, it was a Caro-Kann. So I see the name of the open top is Exchange Caro-Kann, and then just very solid play from White. And this is like one of the most principled variations, where you just develop your pieces in castle. Newer players, the Exchange Caro-Kann is a really good opening, and it's very principled, it's very logical. And Black, she developed in a natural way herself, but then White just kept developing, right? There was nothing out of the norm here from White's perspective. Every move made sense, and finishing the development and then bringing this bishop back to D3, you see why this position is so nice for White. It's the quality of the bishops.
Sure. And let me ask about that, though. The bishop, one of the reasons we play the Caro-Kann often instead of the French is because our bishop on C8 usually does get to escape that pawn chain. Right. Now, it didn't happen in this case because Harika played the move H3, right? Which is designed to restrict that bishop in combination with bishop D3. So but on the other hand, it's slow, right? So Black, can they try like E5 in this position and just blast things open before you get to like, you know, compile your pretty position?
Yeah, it's sort of trading one thing for another, right? You play E5, but then you're left with an isolated pawn often.
Right.
Many players don't want, but this is a move 100%, and Black can go for it. I guess Nazi decided to play the more solid approach rather than creating a clear weakness, but the bishop is a long-term problem after the E6 move. So Jen, I'm completely with you there. As we return to live position, look at this move, B4 played by Harika, which didn't come to my mind initially because this pawn C3 looks like a target, but it's very clear she just wants to bring her next knight into the C5 square, use the dark squares to her advantage.
I like this idea. I mean, it's very out of the box. I wouldn't have thought about it. I'd be thinking about how to checkmate my opponent most quickly. But she's thinking, hey, if I give my opponent zero counterplay and then I start, you know, setting out my mating threats, that's even better. So this position is lovely for White. So there are many different ways to get an advantage, no doubt. And now after F takes E5, Nazi's knight is in take, and that's going to make that H7 square so juicy. White literally just needs to threaten checkmate to get a dominating position.
That's right. And I would start by just simply sliding my rook over to C1. I'm choosing my A1 rook because my E1 rook is likely going to go to F3, or if my queen moves out the way, going to lift. But I need to defend this pawn. I don't want to drop that one. And then knight B3, knight C5, just block all of Black's potential play. And White is just the one dominating. Every single piece is going to be better for White, pretty much.
And then don't forget, at some point, we're also going to get our F-file action in, because rook F1, and you're going to probably have to play G6 at some moment. So yeah, lots of fun being had here for Harika, who's just such a phenomenal blitz and rapid player. She's so great at these formats. She's very practical with her use on the clock, and she's practical with the moves that she plays, trying to always get a position that's easy to play and kind of focusing on that, not just always like what is the exactly most precise way to win.
Exactly. So rook AC1 played. She's going to keep going forward here. Let's go to some other games, because we haven't checked in on Irina Krush against Humpy Koneru. And this one looks very solid, as we first seen it from Black's perspective. White does have more advanced queenside pawns and would love to occupy the C6 square, but that's why Black is keeping this light square bishop. That goes backwards. So knight C6 will always be captured here. It seems like there are no true weaknesses for Black in the position. Would you agree with that, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, you don't count A7 as a weakness because it's so hard to, it's so deep in the position. It is backward though, right? So you can't move that pawn forward because of the en passant rule very comfortably, but it's so hidden. Like if I could, trade, if I could somehow remove my A pawn for your H pawn, sure. But right now it's very hard to get to.
That's a really good thing to point out, that this pawn can be a liability in black's position and you cannot push it yet. So there's a trade-off that I was saying I would like to get rid of this bishop on e4, but if I trade here, then black can play a move like a6 and start trading some queenside pawns as well. And I think that black will avoid the trade of light square bishops, but it's just a good thing to note. But yeah, I think that it's completely fine for black. She has enough time. So let's keep on going just because we want to check as many games as possible. The game between Vidit and Robson. Vidit has his pawn up on h5 now and has the bishop pair. But once again, I'm seeing a position where black doesn't have any notable weaknesses.
Well, this one, though, it feels like white has some potential plans, right? Like I'm even looking at something wild like g4 and g5, get a rook, especially if you get a rook over to g1, right? Yeah. So, Irina and Humpy's position was so solid, whereas this one, there's still so many ways for us to try to make a weakness, even if one doesn't exist yet.
That's right. And g4 is a completely reasonable move. It's not one of those, let me play hope chess and attack. No, that connects the pawn to the other pawn and threatens to go to g5. I guess black does have a knight that can stop that plan, but that's tying down a knight against a threat. That's not always the thing you want to do. I think that Ray's position is solid enough for now, but white does have plenty of options, as you were saying. So let's keep going here.
Oh, but I want to, I really am attracted to that position.
Okay.
Just one more point. And I think that the queen on e3 is interestingly like really poorly placed somehow. Like I wish I could like teleport it to like h4 or something, because it just seems like it's kind of in the way.
So queen f4 ideas may not be out of the question, but the one good thing the queen does do, I would say, is keeps the defense of the c3 knight. Because if that queen goes away, then I'm going to play queen c8 and put pressure down the file and force your knight to either be protected or move out the way. But I would love your knight to move, because then I can potentially infiltrate.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So there's some balance here where Ray has some counterplay of his own. But yeah, very interesting position. Like the pieces are kind of in configurations that are, the pawn structure might be like more typical, but the piece configuration is a little weird. So it does kind of compel me. What other games do we have on tap?
I was gonna go to the top board between Vichy and Jeffrey, because look at this position, and the advantage is sky high for Jeffrey Zhang. Indian fans will not be happy to see that. And the reason why, king on g2 is, that is the safest king I've seen. That king is on h6. And I'm already looking at queen e8, trying to get this f7 pawn, threats along the back rank. So something went wrong for Vichy, and Jeffrey is pouncing.
Well, and we're up a pawn, and not just any pawn. We're up a star pawn here on a4. So I think just that alone gives a huge edge, and black just does not have compensation for it. Although it is, and it's Jeffrey's move to boot. I mean, I was thinking, can I play bishop d4, try to like ask you a question about how to defend f2, because if e3, there's some rook takes d3 stuff maybe, but it's not even my move.
No, I said Jeffrey says,
that's hard.
Have fun with bishop d4 ideas. I'm going to go for the f7 pawn. This king is in trouble too, because once I get f7, g6 is the checkmate threat. So, oh gosh. And
no, yeah, I mean, queen e8, like that just looks like goodbye. I mean, how do you prevent, first of all, you can't even protect the pawn on f7, although I understand that my rook on b8 is hanging, but as you pointed out, Robert, queen takes g6 is mate.
Right. So let's say black throws a move away. This is actually forcing mate, because you may think, oh, I'll take your bishop. You take my rook. I take yours. But I'm not going to take your rook. I'm going to go rook g8 and just go directly for the mate. Oh,
that's a nice move. I like that. I like that. So you're currently up a piece, and there's no way to protect g6. I would have to play rook d4 to rook g4, which isn't legal.
No, unfortunately not. So I actually think that Vichy could resign on this move, because even threatening this pawn on d5 doesn't work, because after queen d4, I still take on f7 and protect the one pawn you're attacking, threaten checkmate, get my rook ready to come to g8. And if you take on d3, I can take you back because my rook is no longer threatened.
What a fantastic rebound for Jeffrey Zhang, who lost a tough game to the legend Vishy in round one, and now is coming back with a stylish win. I mean, what a great opportunity for him to play 2 games in a row against Anand and come out on top in this one.
Yeah, this is huge for Team USA. So it looks like this one is as locked up as it's going to get for Team USA. Let's look at the other. In fact, Vishy has resigned. So it is official. Jeffrey Zhang has beaten former world champion Vishwanathan Anand. So that means Team USA up 1-0. Let's go to some of the other boards to see if they can maintain that lead, because we looked at this game earlier and Jen, I'm going to bring it up on screen. Not looking very pleasant for Nazi Paikidze, but she's hoping to have a fortress here, saying, my position looks bad, but maybe you can't make progress.
Wow. Yeah, this position looks horrible. Rook takes G6 now.
Oh, gosh,
just Rook takes G6, wins the pawn. I think you needed to keep your king on G7, as unpleasant as it was, and hope that if H5 you had G5 and you weren't getting mated, but I think you were getting mated. So I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe you had to play a move like, maybe like Rook G8 or something like that, just to play H5, G5, because now it's not quite checkmate like it was before.
Yeah.
Because the king can escape away here.
Right.
So you need to clear the square.
She was in a situation where she had to find a series of only moves to hang in there, huh?
Oh, and H5. She could have taken on G6, like you pointed out, just to show Jen's
But
line.
this one also, like H5 also looks fine, right? I mean, there's too much pressure, right? If G5,
I think you just take, right? Because you have the mate here, next move.
So you can't play Rook G8 because it's just mate in one. And yeah, you can't stop, because I've actually got 2 mate threats, right? Well, actually only 1, but if you put a piece on G8, then I've got 2.
Right.
So yeah, there's just no way to stop the finish.
Yeah, you'd have to give up your queen, but this is terrible because no matter how I take, this pawn is hanging, that pawn, and you're just winning every single piece on the board.
Yeah. Your rooks are not coordinated as well. So, okay.
Okay, so she didn't lose. Oh, yes, she did. I was saying she didn't lose material, but then Queen G4 happens. Like, no, actually, you're losing at least 1 pawn, and down goes E6, and then B5 is going to be targeted. And look at these passed pawns. Now, this is
Rook G6 is even a possibility if you want to just win another pawn that way. But okay, so this looks fantastic for Harika. So this would make the score 1-1 if indeed she wins. We expect her to quite shortly. That would be a big win for JX, Jeffrey Zhang, and a big win for Harika for India, which would bring our likely score to 1-1.
That's right. And so Team USA can't afford a 3-3 tie. They need to come out on top. So that means some of their players may need to take some risk. Let's look at the game between Wonder Liang and Pragnananda, because at the start, it looked like it was a tense fight. Now the position has taken a totally different shape, Jen. And the move Rook B8 was just played because the last couple moves were pawn takes B5. And instead of just taking back on B5, which allows a rook trade, throws a knight to B6, forcing the rook to B8 as both the bishop and the rook are under attack. And now I wonder, thinking, do I take the bishop? Do I take this pawn? And if I take the pawn B5, how do I take the pawn? Which would you capture here, the bishop or the pawn B5?
I think I'd capture the pawn on B5. That would be my first instinct, because that bishop's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, black's up a pawn. I just noticed that. So black is, well, up 2 pawns technically, but the B5 pawn is going to be lost. But
about to be taken. Yeah. What would I take it with though? Because I can maybe I can take on C8 and take the E6 pawn after. Bishop takes B5 check. What do you do there?
I think I have to bring my king up, even though I don't want to. And knight D5 check. Probably king just goes to D6. I don't like bringing my king up in the open, but your knight's under attack, so I can probably just get away with it.
And what if I play rook D1, looking at knight C8, rook take D7 check threat?
Yeah, I guess I have to. I have no choice.
Now you would have to play knight D8, rook D8 yourself. Yeah.
This is it's like one step away from just winning for white, because black's pieces aren't coordinated. But it seems like for the moment that would hold. So I wonder, thinking about the capture on B5, the capture on C8. If you take on C8, the rook takes back. You can take on E6.
Right, you can take on E6, and then if I play king D7, there's no bishop takes B5 check.
Right,
because I can take your rook, but you can also play rook E1 here.
Ooh, yeah, rook E. Ooh, I was thinking rook B6 to hit these 2 pawns, but rook E1 also is attempting, although there might be a 95 suddenly cutting off
Oh,
circulation.
yeah, that's a good move. There's a lot of blows here. Absolutely. So still a very exciting position. And now I think your move rook b6 would come into play.
Right.
But yeah,
he went after rook b. He took on b5 with check and king e7, and now a wonder is on the clock again, trying to figure out how to get after this king. The bishop can't develop. The knight on b6, the bishop on b5, perfectly placed here, but black is up a pawn. So if you can fend off the immediate wave of attack, then black's extra pawn may speak in this position.
Yeah, this one looks really exciting, but in only 1 minute and 17 seconds left for Rwanda. So I have to figure out what to do here. We looked at a couple of moves, right? We looked at rook d1 and we looked at knight takes c8 immediately. You looked at knight d5 check. I also was thinking rook d1, then rook d8, then knight d5 check. How does that change things? Because you can no longer bring your king to d6, right?
Yeah.
Because now I have like knight takes f6 check or something like that.
That would not be good. So I have to go back to f8.
So now you have to go back to f8, right? And now I was wondering, okay, can I go after the e6 pawn now with knight c7 or knight f4? But you can just take on d1 with a forcing move. So probably not.
Yeah, at the end, the king comes right back out to e7 and covers all the important squares. Close, but no, it doesn't quite pan out. So f4 was played, knight d6, and rook a to d1. So stopping e5, no pawn push for you, bringing the rooks to the open lines here. I do like what a wonder is thinking here. I mean, his pieces are all on the right squares, but it's unclear how he's going to break through in the end.
Well, you're saying that if like, is there ever a way we can play it just f5? Well, not now. Now that you put your rook on d8, it doesn't work.
Yep, the d7 square is important to cover, and c4 play. Wow. So just saying, I'll be down a pawn, that's fine, because you can't move your bishop. This is a clamp if I've ever seen one. And black is struggling to find active play and is down under a minute.
That's right. Well, both players are about to be down under a minute, but c4, not a move that occurred to me, but makes a lot of sense looking at more of the positional compensation than immediately trying to tactically win back his pawn. I mean, fantastic to see.
And he can now win back the pawn. Rook takes d8, king takes e8, knight c8. You take back with the rook, I presume, then rook takes e6. You gain that pawn back, your bishop, your rook, very active here. I would imagine that white has to be better, and the eval bar says slightly better for white, but it looks really nice.
It does look really good. Maybe there's like some kind of, yeah. I'm wondering why black is doing even okay there, because their pieces seem so bottled up. Maybe there's some tactical sequence they have to liquidate. But yeah, looking like slightly more promising for a wander on the clock and on the position. Wait, is this a position now or no?
This is live. And
okay, this is live. I thought that they already did the sequence you showed.
Nope, but we'll probably get there.
So rook c8, rook e6, knight d4 doesn't look good because of rook e8 check and rook e7. So you kind of have to do something else here, right? Yeah, followed by rook e7 check, and now white should be winning.
This looks problematic, especially with the time. I just want to quickly show some of the other games while we have a chance. It looks like Ray Robson with the black pieces is completely winning against Vidit, and the move queen h3 check, followed by knight f4 ideas. This knight is loose on c3. Knight f4 check just wins the game, and that's it. I mean, this is over.
Nice. Oh my God, looks like USA might win and take this to tiebreak, Robert.
Yes, indeed. Queen d3 found. The king has to move. The knight hangs with check. Black's king is perfectly safe. Ray Robson, he wins. He might be the hero that Team USA needs. Irina Krush and Humpy here, they're deep in this game. Irina looks better in the end game. A more active king.
More active king. 10 seconds though left for Irina. There is still a decent chance that this one would be a draw. But let's see, like, if this were to be a draw, it would be we would already have 2.5 points for USA, right?
Yes, they would need one more. They need a Wonder Liang to convert his position. Okay, this is looking like a draw now that the queenside pawns have been traded. So let's go to the game on board six or the junior girls.
Yes. So this one did look good for Vishali, and it is looking fantastic. Wait, whoa, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, sorry, I had to refresh the board there.
Wait a second. It's 45 seconds left for Talia. Vishali has only 17 seconds left, and it looks like some of her advantage has evaporated.
Oh yeah, queen d1 check would trade the queens off. We'd be in an even material rook endgame. So queen e5 played, and now queen check and queen d6. 6. No, then there's rook takes b5. That's the idea. Nice little idea by Vaishali. Check. King up here. Queen to d6. There's rook takes b5 because the queen may be pinned, but the rook still defends the pawn.
But then taking rook b2. I mean, rook
right.
d2, not the end of the world potentially. We do have that fork.
That's right. So actually, this should hold for black in the end here. And you see the EVA bar saying it's zeros. And that's actually what is happening. So this would be a very important save for Talia. And she plays all this. And Jen, this is looking like a save.
And that, I think that alone would give USA the win if that game that we were just looking at is a win or a draw for Awander. And it looks like Awander was better, but I mean, honestly, anything could happen with so little time on the clock. So obviously we have to wait for everything to finish. But it looks fantastic for white.
Wow. And Awander had a very bad day yesterday. He lost his 2 rapid games before winning in the Blitz. He is off to a totally different start today, drawing with the black piece against Nihal Sarin, now playing a superstar Pragnananda. That's 2 extra pawns and should just be winning for white, bringing the king up to support the pawn push. Yeah, this is unstoppable pawns.
That's right. I mean, that alone will give USA the W. And this is exactly what you're talking about, Robert, that sure, we might not have seen the 5-1 domination show in the first round, but it doesn't matter because it is about that that main victory on the scorecard. And then we're going to just go to our tie break, assuming that this one is a win for Awander. And I think actually the final score might end up being 4-2 USA, right?
Yeah, and he actually might not even need to win this game. He might only need to draw because it looks like Talia is surviving on her board. But it's a nervous moment. Knight takes f7. Knight takes f7, and you get the pawn back. This does not look winning it. Oh, but rook g8, that's a mistake. Made in time trouble.
Boy, knight takes f7 was on the board.
Oh, gosh, just to show that really quickly because you get a queen in the corner, but the knight can capture back. This is on a dark square. The knight will help to take that. White would probably not be winning this game, although the advantage would still be with white.
Yeah. I mean, unless we have a really quick like a5, bishop c6 idea, which is for another day.
We will show that after. That is a great idea. Now that you say it, I really love it. And knight g5 play. So if black can get this pawn somehow, but you can't. The knight is cut off by this bishop. The king is not able to help out. So white can move the bishop somewhere. Maybe just back to a4 and take this pawn here. Then rush the a pawn up. No, but then there's knight f5. Oh, this is still a fight. Wow, Jen, it's like, it feels like white should have won, then black was holding, and now once again, it's liking white's chances. Okay, a6 played. Oh, that's so nice. Jenny didn't take the pawn back. You went bishop c6 to get this rook out of g8. That is a wonderful spot by Awander Liang.
Very, very nice. What a move. Like not capturing, and there we have bishop d5. Is that a hesitation?
I don't know about all that, but rook e4 check should win. There it is, wins the game.
There it is. There it is. And a wonderful game indeed, as this is going to get it done for the United States and force a tiebreak, which, I mean, honestly, after that dominating first round performance, I don't think a lot of people would have predicted that, Robert.
I wouldn't have thought that USA could bounce back like this. We still do have the one game remaining. This is completely level. It's an absolute draw at this stage between Vaishali and Talia. Rook per side, 2 pawns that are in the same line for each player. And so unless there's some tragic mouse slip, disconnection, blunder, this is a very straightforward draw. In fact, the game is over. But Jennifer, I want to show the line you brought up, because that was a fantastic tactical idea that you mentioned between Awander and Pragnananda. So I'm going to take us back to that moment. As you said here, right here, I was like, okay, that rook can be captured because the knight captured the corner, but your idea was really clever with a5. And if you take this pawn, bishop c6, that is so awesome.
Yeah, that is nice to see. And it's kind of funny because it mirrors the game in a little way, right? Like in the game, he played a6 to get the bishop on c6. This time we played bishop c6 to get the pawn to a6.
That's so cool. I really like that.
So there's a little symmetry there, but really well done by Awander Liang. I mean, so many good games in the match in both rounds. But of course, the second round was Team USA. And so far, who are the stars, the people that are scoring multiple points? I think Harika has been absolutely crushing, right? So I imagine she's had a great day so far.
She won both games. She beat Anna Zitansi. Although the play and the results may not be completely the same because Anna Zitansi was the one pressing throughout that whole game. It just so happened in the time scramble, things went Harika's way. But that's, even if she drew that game rather than winning, it's still 1.5 of the 2 against strong competitors. So we have to give her credit. I think other players that have looked good, well, Ray Robson played one game and won with black against Vidit. So you can't really complain about that result for Team USA. And a Wonder Liang is probably the hero for Team USA, drawing Nihal Sarin with black and then beating Pragnanda with white, especially after yesterday's debacle. That's an amazing performance by him.
Yeah, well done, and great play all around. I mean, some really high quality games. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the playoffs, Robert, as this is your second in a row.
I guess I bring the playoff luck or misfortune, but we are going to have 6 games played. So, the same sort of lineups that we've seen to this point, but it's 3 minutes plus 2-second increment blitz. That is a very, very fast time control. So mouse speed is essential. Now, if that is tied 3-3, we get a drawing of lots by the arbiters. So they just pick a board out of a hat. So it could be the junior, open under 20. It could be the women's board. It could be the open board. But whatever they pick, then USA and India will send a player of their choosing to face off in Armageddon. And Armageddon is as exciting as it gets in chess. Jen, the odds are not in favor of an Armageddon, but that would be pretty awesome if we see one.
I would love to see that. That would be a lot of fun. But hey, I mean, I think the 3-2 time control games in themselves are going to be fascinating, and we're going to have to pop from board to board. I mean, who do you think is going to be the star in that time control, Robert?
Easy answer here, Nihal Sarin, because he's going to come back in. He is one of the best players, period, in blitz. So he's going to take on a Wonder Liang, heavy favorite for India. I think actually Vichy is probably going to sit this one out. They did that in yesterday's tiebreaker. He may not be as familiar or as excited about online blitz, even though he's an exceptional blitz player. So Vichy probably out is my guess, and Nihal Sarin certainly in. And that is where India is looking to make their mark.
Yeah, and then I also think Harika, fantastic blitz player. So yeah, I think the Team USA, they're going to need to look to get points on. I mean, really, they're going to be looking for the women's boards because of what you mentioned. But it's going to be, I think, India as the favorites. But hey, this match just showed us that Team USA is getting warmed up, so anything can definitely happen.
And I'll throw you an X factor. I think the girls under 20 board, Talia Cervantes, a very, very strong blitz player. She's played in the Pro Chess League and has some great experience there. So as the time control gets shorter, the rating disadvantage that USA may have on that board, that also becomes less important, and nerves are the essential factor. So I'm looking at that board as a critical one because it's really a toss-up at this stage. And Jen, you and I will be back shortly because we need a break. We need to gather ourselves. It will be exciting chess when we return. India, USA, a spot in the championship on the line. You will not want to miss it from the 2021 FIDE Online Olympiad presented by chess.com.
Let's try another bot. How about myself? Where am I actually? There I am. Okay, let's see how that works. Okay, London it is. That looks like a positional concession. So c3, e6, okay. Yeah, should I go b3 and a4 and all that, or just let's go bishop e2 and let's do that. Sorry, not the new thing, but knight e5. Yeah, it's kind of fun to use the third person and say, let's see what he does, but this is me. Ah, like that. Okay. And what am I supposed to do here? So one thing is rook takes b2, bishop b2, knight c4, bishop c3, rook d1, and a check. But do I have enough for an exchange? I don't know. The other is just to play knight d4, and then maybe queen g4. Though already then I'm getting worried he will castle. Oh, that's annoying. I hate it when I do this to myself. Is that how it goes? Okay, let's do that and see. Oh, that's annoying. I didn't even see that was possible. I thought he had to move the knight. What am I going to do now? Knight f6 isn't going to work. Queen g4, king h8, knight g5 looks like I'm desperate, which I probably am. Okay, let's do. If I go knight d6, he does what, b5? Or does he just play knight d3? Nope, he takes. I could try to simplify into some endgame. d6, knight d3. Oh, this is so annoying. Being outplayed by yourself. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's do that. Then let's do that. And should I take on e5? Will you take? Oh, this is pathetic. So I go queen takes b7, queen takes. Just desperately trying to weasel a draw out of this one. Okay, what can I do? Oh, is he going to cheapo me with everything? Can I grovel with queen a7, rook d1, rook d1, queen b2? I would doubt it, so let's move. Ah, but then he just gets queen d4. No, he's letting me have this pawn. Maybe that gives me a glimmer of hope. Or maybe he doesn't. He's just going to go queen... I don't think this is going to end well. What can I do? Rook fd1, would that get me anywhere? Okay, let's try to go to b3. Hopefully, can I wish I could go rook c2 now, but I have a feeling I can't. So let's go queen c2, but then he goes queen c4. Okay, let's do that. Then if I go here, what does he do? Rook e1, he's going to go queen b2 or what? Okay, let's see how this goes. He is going to go queen b2. So what have I got here? don't immediately see the refutation of rook c2, but well, what can I do? Okay, that's all very well, but if I approach with my king, okay, let me step back a second. Not really sure what the hell I'm doing. And okay, let's go b4. And am I going to be lost? Because he's going to come king 6. So let me put the rook here. Then if I come here, what is he going to do? Can I go king e3? Does that help? f5, okay. Should I take the pawn and then it should be a draw? Or maybe I can go b5 and try to be pretty about it. There might be an f4 check. Let's just take the pawn and hope for the best. Not sure what that witty move is for. But let me get in g3. And let's go here. Maybe I should have gone h4. Okay, let's go up the board and see if that helps a little bit. Oh, I can get some checks in now. I don't even know where my piece is anymore. Let me go 8. Oh, that was unfortunate because I've allowed him to get his pawn to h3 and then my h2 pawn is going to be weak. And suddenly this position isn't looking even remotely defensible anymore. Okay, still I would rather be active than passive, so let's go with that. Okay. Okay. And let's try attacking his pawn for a while. Oh, is he going to go rook? This has got to be the silliest cheapo of all time. Okay. You know, I can't tell if I'm a complete nitwit or what the hell is going on. What am I supposed to do? It should be a fairly simple draw by now, I think. But I think I can still mess it up badly. Okay, for what it's worth, let's go there and hope for the best. And let's take that pawn. Let's grovel back. And is he... Oh, h2 and g3. Oh, I forgot that. Oh, damn. not sure why he's doing this. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, f3 would be too clever by half. And what can I do? He's going to go king g6 and rook h7. Yeah, you can trust a computer to find an even simpler win.
And we are back. We are super excited for the match between India and Team USA to go into tie breaks. We have the lineups, Jennifer. They're set. The players getting ready. What do you make of the lineup selections for each team?
Well, I make that you have been a captain or a coach yourself, Robert, because you did predict it. They have sat the legendary Vishanan, bringing in Hari Krishna as board one to face off against Jeffrey Zhang. Meanwhile, we also have Adiban versus Robson. The U.S. have sat Anna Zatonsky and put Nazia Pakidze back into the lineup. So that's an interesting choice there. A really tough decision is because all the U.S. women have roughly similar blitz strengths, I would say.
That's certainly the case. So it makes it hard for team captain John Donaldson. And I think for Team India, one choice was very easy. Is what I highlighted before the break. Nihal Sarin coming back in on the junior board, the junior open board, take on Awonder Liang. So Awonder has had a great start to the day today, 1.5 of the 2 against the Indian teenage superstars. But Nihal Sarin is as good as they come on chess.com. So he's going to have his work cut out for him. I would say that is the biggest advantage in any board is Nihal with the white pieces against Awonder Liang.
And that gives India the edge in the match, of course, but it doesn't take much for that to flip in the United States' favor. It just takes one of these tighter matches where it could go any way. You know, if the USA wins one of those games, suddenly it is a complete toss-up, actually potentially in the United States' favor, depending on how the other boards are going. And there's so many games that could happen with Jeffrey Zhang, Ray Robson. I mean, you could easily see one of those games go to the United States. And meanwhile, the game between Talia Cervantes and Vaishali, I think, is also going to be very close. I would give the site favorite there to Vaishali, but it's very, very close. As you pointed out, Talia is a really good blitz player.
It's true. Hard to predict these matchups. It can go either way. And one of the struggles I think we should mention, Jen, is that when you get into time trouble in a rapid game, there's more clarity probably around the team situation some results are in. When you're playing blitz, you don't have time to check, should I make that repetition here or should I play on because my team needs me to play on? How are you going to check on your team results? It's very difficult to multitask in that manner. But the players will just have to do their best because the games are going to start very soon and they just have to play the board ahead of them.
It is very difficult indeed, Robert, but luckily for them and for us, draws are less common in blitz because mistakes go up, aggressive play goes up. So we don't normally see as many draws, but it's true. It gives a very difficult decision for a player if they're faced with one. And it's also going to be difficult for us, Robert, as we're just going to have to go in and find the most exciting games.
I am happy to have that challenge. The games are underway. We have board one here. Jeffrey Zhang with the black pieces, Vitaly Krishna with white. We see a capture on c4, a4 to stop b5, but this is all theoretical to this point.
An old school Slav, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. As we see the move bishop b4, tempering the very quick e4 push. As you see queen e2 trying to insist on making that move e4 happen.
And then e4 can be played, but sometimes that loosens your control of d4. So it is a trade-off. And we are seeing both players play instantly. So I'm going to keep an eye out for these other boards as the players on board one, they have everything under control. Let's go to this board. It is the junior girls board. And we see that white has this beautiful center of pawns here, but black just struck back with e5.
Yeah, black strikes back with e5, and now white has a big decision. Do we take on e5? Do we play d5? Well, there's the answer. She's played d5. She's going for the space advantage. But we know that in these types of structures, black will also get play of her own.
That's
so
true.
She's going to eventually play for the move f5 potentially. And it's going to be a wild one because a close position in blitz, Robert, is wild because eventually it opens up and then they have 10 seconds in the clock.
Yes, and b3 plays that bishop b2, b4 can try to kick a knight out of c5, but your f5 idea, it still comes to mind. I would start with knight c5 because b4 is not possible. Just show that very quickly. You would love to play b4 to kick the knight, but unfortunately your rook is loose down on a1. It just takes a turn too many to be able to accomplish this. So knight c5 was played, and next move is f5, and the bishop can recapture. So I like Vaishali's position.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, which position do you feel like is more easy to play in blitz?
For Black's position here, I think that just f5 is the clearest plan, and I wouldn't even be thinking here. I would just be making that move. I wonder what she's afraid of potentially in making the move. I guess the answer is nothing, because there it is.
Yep, there's f5, and now what do? We can't actually support, so we have to take on f5. A lot of times we have a choice, like we have like a pawn that can go to f3. Here, no choice. Must take on f5, and then we'll see bishop takes f5 on the board.
Yeah, that looks like it's pleasant for Black to get development to control squares like d3 and e4. So I like this start. Let's go to the game between Ray Robson and Audubon. We are going to be jumping around, doing as best we can. I just saw this moment here, Jen, where bishop took on b6, and you don't have to recapture, taking on f3 first, ruining the pawn structure. And now, speaking of ruined pawn structures, double pawns for Black on the queen side. Whose position would you take here, the bishop for White or the potential attack for Black?
I take the extra minute and 20 seconds for Black, as that is very important in blitz. And that said, where would I put my knight? I want to put my knight on g6, I think.
Yeah, I think after knight g6, then f5 will come in, kicking this knight again. You would love to get to f4 and be safe here, but the queen comes to f3. It seems like White is trying to keep the king side protected. The knight can develop, if rook's coming to d1, and this d6 pawn is isolated when all is said and done in a potential target, though I do like the potential that Black has on the king side.
And looks like Black's time advantage has almost evaporated as he's really thinking in those last couple of moves, or right now in this move in particular. Yeah, where else could he put the knight? Is he thinking about knight d4? I still kind of like knight d6 the best because like it's such a nice square options there. Whereas on g4, I was a little worried about moves like e5, even just kind of blasting things open.
That's right. And I guess one other sort of knight c4, but I think that makes White's life a little easier because you can just take and then put your queen on d4 at some point soon. And this pawn is a bit of a target. Knight d2 comes in. I don't see where Black's going to attack from if that knight gets straight off the board.
Well, he made a choice. So let's see what it is, because it is oh, that's why he was thinking. He played knight e4, sacrificing on e5 with the idea of queen h4.
Oh,
but is it good? Goodness. Is it a good move? What about bishop takes f7 check and queen f3 and queen g3 there?
Yeah, so you take on e5 and after queen h4, throwing in this check, because after king takes, you get another check and then queen g3. Although this would be even material when all is said and done. But if we get to this stage here, I think that neither side can be particularly unhappy.
True. Okay. Yeah. So maybe, but that's just a long variation, wrong variation. Maybe there's something else there. White has actually played incredibly calmly, queen e2, saying that you're still in trouble materially because your knights are defending each other.
Knight takes h2. I think you have to go for it because queen h4, too obvious. f3 hits one knight, hits second knight, queen protects h2. So I'm looking at knight takes h2 here, king takes, and queen h4 check, and then give me this pawn. And I'm just trying to make some problems for White with my queen and my knight.
True. But you are, what do you have? You have just two pawns for the piece. Will it prove to be enough? Well, has Black made a move yet? No, he has not. And we're playing a 40-second game. Let's just see if he plays knight takes h2 and then move to another game because there's so much action going on. We got to check out some more stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually going to just pull up.
Okay, yeah, you go.
Look at this game between Jeffrey Zhang and Vitaly Krishna. Bishop f2 played, hitting queen, hitting the rook. But it seems like Black should be able to get out of this. And I think the reason why is queen d3 offers a queen trade and the rook will capture back. And isn't Black up a rook here?
Yes, Black is up a rook. So if he finds queen to d3,
what
happened instead?
Took on d1. Took a bishop instead. queen takes, and then queen d3. Now, black is still up a piece, so Jeffrey Zhang is completely winning. You see, -7 almost for the Team USA board one here. This is unfortunate news for India.
That is unfortunate, especially coupled with the news on the Ray Robson board, as it looked like Ray was on top as well. But let's look at the other boards. What do we have on the one that you thought was going to be very favorable for India? Sarin, he is up a pawn. Will it be enough to win? Well, looking from the other boards in India, it better be.
It better be. And he can play this out for a while. I think the time trouble will be the biggest problem for a wonder. Maybe objectively, this could be a draw, but now rook f4. Just stop it. You want to trade rooks. And that's the thing, is the rook needs to stay on a5 to stop this pawn's progress.
Well, yes, white is going to feel the pressure to win that game because it's looking bad for India. What about that board between we actually haven't seen Irina and Humpy's game at all yet, I think. I wonder how they're doing.
They're fighting.
14, looks like a wild one. Two bishops for Humpy. I love her position, but it is a time scramble. 13 seconds for Humpy.
Yeah, these bishops can't quite do anything. So I like the way Irina's playing, trading the rooks. E5 may be a target. The knight on c5 bolstered by these queenside pawns. I think that Irina should not have difficulty here. And look at this queen coming in. This is just looking very nice for black.
Yeah, it looks easier to play for the black pieces. And well, yeah, and there's Irina goes. She keeps the queens on the board, looking at those kind of clumped up minor pieces for Humpy. They're not great bishops. They don't have that scope. Whoa, it's looking great for the United States on almost every board, Robert.
It really is. Let's look at the game between Nazi Pakidze and Harika Jonavali. Team India needs this game, and it looks like they might get it. Black is in the driver's seat. Bishop e4, hitting the knight on d4. If the knight moves, there could be bishop d3 mate. That's mate. Oh my gosh. She walked into checkmate. So Team India actually strikes. Jeffrey Zhang gets the win. It is 1-1. Let's keep on going. How is the game between Talia Cervantes and Vaishali? Bishop takes h7 check. If you take here, the queens get traded, which is important because rook h2 is a threat. So do not take the bishop. Move your king somewhere.
And this looks fantastic for black, though.
It says white won.
Did white win on time?
Oh my goodness.
We'll have to check on that. We'll have to check on that and see what happened there, guys.
And black is winning with the move king h8.
So let's move to another game as we find out what exactly happened there. What happened on Ray Robson? Oh,
Ray Robson wins, and that means Team USA has already won. Jeffrey wins, Ray wins, Talia wins, and there was a draw between Nihal and a Wonder Liang. Team USA officially makes it through based on those results, and Irina Krush is probably going to win her game as well with his king out on g3.
Not sure. Could this be it? No, because you just have bishop f8 stopping all the checks at some point. Is that the deal? Or maybe Irina's looking at the scores now and saying, let's get a draw.
That's true. There is these checks, and she plays bishop f8 to stop them.
But maybe Irina's not totally sure about that result yet because she does continue to go for the win. 3.5. It says it right there, Robert, that the United States has already won this match. What a nice upset. And I see
and to end it.
Just to make a fine point of it here. Irina Krush wins her game as well, pinning that queen to the king. What a game.
What a match by Team USA. They lost the first leg of the rapid 5-1. You could be demoralized. You could think we have no chance, but that's not what happened. Team captain John Donaldson switched some players into the lineup. Ray Robson in particular gave them some life by winning with the black piece against Vidit. And then Irina Krush, she drew both games against Humpy Cornero and then wins the blitz game. What a performance by her, not to be overlooked.
And look at these smiles, these euphoric. I mean, I saw Talia just a minute ago on the screen and she looked really thrilled. I wonder what happened in that game, Roberts, because you said that she ended up winning somehow. It looked like she was losing on the board. Maybe she won on time.
I think it was on time, but look at Team USA. A Wonder Liang deserves a lot of credit for withstanding the pressure today. He's one of the heroes for Team USA. He wins 1.5 out of 2 points in the rapid. Then he draws with a black piece against Nihal Sarin, who is one of the highest rated blitz players on chess.com. And so it's a great result for a Wonder, a nice bounce back day. Jeffrey Zhang loses game 1, beats Vishy in game 2 in quite convincing manner, and then wins the game in blitz with the black pieces. So many players contributing for Team USA. The one problematic board as we look forward to the finals tomorrow between Russia and USA is that second women's board. Anna Zatanski lost game 1. Nazi Baikidze lost game 2. Nazi lost the tiebreaker. These are exceptionally strong players for USA. But do you think that Alexandra Kostyanyuk is going to take it lightly on these players? No, she defeated Zhu Wenjun 2-0 today. So she will say, hey, that's the board that Russia needs me to win on, and she's going to look to continue her winning trend.
I agree, Robert. I mean, Harika, fantastic board 2 on the women's side, such a great blitz player. Alexandra Kostyanyuk is not a great consolation in tomorrow's match either. It is very difficult. But hey, I mean, we also saw Irina Krush rise to the task, drawing 2 very solid games against Humpy Koneru, who, by the way, I think is like one of the highest rated women players in history. You know, she broke well over 2,600, and she is just a phenomenal legend in her own right. And then Irina actually ended up getting 2 points out of 3 against her. So really promising play from Irina.
Yeah, and Irina, of course, a mainstay of Team USA in these type of events for a long time. She's spearheaded the women's team. And as we see the full picture here, as the semifinals have come to conclusion, in the blitz, Talia Cervantes, she did win on time. There was a disconnection. So that's unfortunate for Team India, but it looks like it would not have mattered because Team USA won on board 1. They won on board 2. Irina wins on the top women's board, and then a Wonder Liang drew there. So that was all they needed. Talia was a surplus of points, but what a comeback. I really am struggling to wrap my head around this because, Jen, as you and I talked off air earlier today, Team India puts their all into this competition. They have such good team chemistry. I've seen the tweets with Vishy Anand going over games with the youngsters from the team, just trying to help them improve. They want this event so badly. And for Team USA to storm back after losing the first match, that says a lot about them because they don't have Fabiano Caruana. They don't have Wesley So. They don't have Hikaru Nakamura, Lenier Dominguez. You name a top US player, those top few, they're not there. Sam Shanklin also not playing. But Jeffrey Zhang, after a really rough start in preliminaries, to come back in this manner in the playoffs, you couldn't ask for a tougher player to lead your team.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the depth of the US squad and to their skills in the blitz portion, because, you know, the Rapids went to blitz, and I mean, our top 2 boards just were incredible. I mean, Jeffrey Zhang and Ray Robson quickly achieving fantastic positions on board 1 and 2. And then we saw the rest of the match. And honestly, Robert, I am very happy that it did not come down to that a technical failure on the last board. It's just nice to see that the match would have ended the same way anyway.
That's right. So we are going to go on a quick break. When we return, we'll just wrap up the day that was. We'll talk about Russia versus USA tomorrow. Whew, what a day we've had. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in a few short minutes. And we are back here to wrap up the show. It's been a phenomenal day of chess. First, Team Russia takes down the Chinese super team, and then Team USA, I think a team that nobody expected to make to the finals, gets past Team India despite losing the first leg in the rapid time control. So Jen, as we look forward to tomorrow's final, the championship on the line, Russia, USA, I personally have to give the nod to Russia as the favorite. But do you think the Team USA can do it 2 days in a row?
They definitely can. They can. And Russia's definitely got to be the favorite. They have incredible women's boards. And I think also, though, what we're seeing from USA is a lot of team spirit. I mean, you really felt the electric energy when we saw them in the Zoom room after the win. Everybody was just so euphoric. They know that they were the underdogs, and that makes winning even sweeter. But look at what we have tomorrow. Look at these top players, the top women players. Well, we don't see any USA flags because it is so stacked with very high rated grandmasters. And in particular, Goryachkina, who's one of the first female players ever outside Judith Polgar, Ho Yifan, Humpy Kaneru, and Muzichuk to crash that 2,600 barrier, Robert. She is a huge boon for the Russian team.
She is, and she's ascending, and that's not to take anything away from Katerina Lakhno and Alexander Kostenyuk, who won the Women's World Cup recently, and just today defeated Zhu Wenjun 2-0. So that Russian team is super strong. But look actually on the second row of this graphic, Polina Shuvalova there. She is the Russian junior girl player. She is 2,500 plus FIDE. So if we thought that Talia Cervantes had her hands full today with Vaishali, and Vaishali is great and performed well, tomorrow is going to be that much tougher.
Yeah, so everybody's going to have to rise to the occasion from the US side if they want to give Russia a great battle. But you know what? They did it today, Robert. So with that positive energy propelling them forward, I really feel this is going to be an extremely tight match, one that you're not going to want to miss.
No, certainly not. And just from top to bottom, you just look at that Russian team. There are no weak points there. The USA is a very strong lineup, but you think of the Artemievs, the Dubovs, Andrei Yesipenko as the junior board. I mean, there's just nowhere you can look at and say that Team USA is the favorite, but maybe that serves them well. They like being the underdog. Ray Robson subbed in today, beats Vidit with black. Nobody could have called that result. So credit to Team USA. I think that second women's board in particular will need to just adjust heading into tomorrow's match, because while a Lakhno or a Kostenyuk is the favorite, Nazi Baikidze, Anna Zatonsky, exceptional players in their own right. So that's where Russia will look to score, but Team USA will also be able to fend them off with some strong play from those two.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ray Robson. I mean, what a star he's been today. It just seems like he's playing really accurate chess in wild positions, Robert. So, I mean, if he keeps that up, that could be a major factor in making that match close tomorrow.
Well, you said wild positions. I'm pretty sure there's a guy named Daniil Dubov on the other side who has no problems making the position wild and excels in those. So it's going to be a very fun matchup. On paper, Russia the favorite. However, you never know in just these two matches, I should say, of 6 games each. And with Jeffrey Zhang rising to the occasion, he did poorly in the preliminaries by his lofty standards. He then lost the game 1 yesterday against Kazakhstan. He blundered a rook, wins game 2, does well today by beating Vichy as a rebound game. So tomorrow, whether it's Artemiev or Dubov or these strong players, he will be able to score some victories, and Team USA will need every single point to take down the powerhouse from Russia. But Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure today commentating with you. I couldn't have scripted this any better. It was such a blast heading into the tiebreak. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Robert. And big thank you to FIDE and chess.com. And of course, to all of our viewers and fans on Twitch. You guys had some great comments. I'll never forget, hesitate. But we are going to be rating Title Tuesday. And before that, we have another big thank you, Robert. You want to try this name?
No, I'm not. But we do want to thank our producer, Bick, who is working so hard throughout the entire tournament every single division and pool he's been a part of. So the show would not be possible without him. And to our audience, we really thank you for the continued support and viewership. You make our lives so much better. It's fun to read the chat and see the comments there and people rooting for their teams and their country. So thank you so much to everybody. We are going to sign off. Do enjoy Title Tuesday, hosted by James Canty. That will be on chess.com events channel. You'll follow that. You'll be able to watch all great events as they unfold by the ones I was there. But for now, see you tomorrow for more from the FIDE Online Olympiad. It will be the final. You will not want to miss that.
Bye, guys.